In this episode, we explore the next platform and how it enables sustainable capital building by more and more people. Welcome, Greg.
Thanks.
We want to go deeper on this platform layer. So before in other episodes, we start like framing the architecture for innovation system, where we talk about people, process, and platform. But we have heard from some of our listeners a lot of questions about this platform layer. So I want to go deep in that. Could you explain a little bit more what does it mean, and what do you need to actually be successful there?
Sure. Yeah, I think the the platform is maybe one of the things that people overlook, but it's foundational. It's why we put it at the base of the architecture. It's easy for an organization to assume that their vision and purpose and their values and language and stories and rituals and goals are inclusive of the idea of being innovative, of being creative, of building capital. But when you look closely, many of them aren't, again, because they're usually an outcome of a performance system. And those are really crucial things to establish and communicate to your organization because they align people, right? It's a belief system that aligns the behavior of an organization. So thinking about what is the belief system that people are signing up for and investing their own limited human capital in, what's that? So that's a piece of it in the platform that often gets overlooked. And then on the next resources side, there's often an assumption that whatever tools we're investing in for the now business will work for the next business. And that's not the case. So are you actually collecting data that's related to your innovation opportunities that may have nothing to do with the now instance of your organization? Where does that data reside? Who has access to it? Are you collecting knowledge generated from your learning culture and making that available? So if I've done a lot of work around a particular constituent or consumer in a marketplace or member of my community that I serve, have we captured that? Our assumptions about their needs, our assumptions about solutions that are going to be interesting to them, valuable to them, about what we've learned through the small bets. Are we capturing that and making that available through some kind of knowledge management system? Often the answer is no. There's not a place to capture that in the existing knowledge management system of an organization, which tends to be really about almost like self-help, self-guided help, or zero support, zero effort, kind of zero staff person support for an organization, how to kind of get tasks or things done, but not this new knowledge that's being produced. And then do we have frameworks like the innovation system architecture itself that people understand, or the Super 7 criteria, or the next cycle that organize people's thinking, their strategies, and their actions? Do we have the metrics, which we've discussed in other episodes, that are clear indicators of progress? And importantly, are we giving people the tools and the technologies that they need to do the job? I keep coming back to this, but my dad drafted us into a lot of hard labor as kids. So we had a lot of projects. The good thing is my dad was an engineer, so he valued tools. In fact, if we didn't treat his tools well, we would know. But he would never ask us to do a job that we didn't have the tools for. Yeah. And I think the same in an organization. If you're asking somebody to innovate, are you giving them tools that allow them to run these innovation cycles, that allow them to track an opportunity all the way through a discovery-driven development process, that allow them to share knowledge and data, to allow executives to look in on that and make decisions based on what's been accumulated? So are we giving them that toolkit? Now, that's kind of where our passion lies as tool builders. But I think even if we weren't making tools, we'd say that's incredibly important. And then are we creating an environment that is conducive to that? Are we allowing people to work in a place where ideas can be shared? Again, Jobs looking at that Pixar headquarters and saying, I want to create a place that invites serendipity. Have we created an environment where serendipitous insights can be gained? Are we creating a place where fabrication can be done, where experiments can be conducted? We do some work with an organization called Building Momentum, founded by some ex-military guys. They teach leadership and team building through making. Mm-hmm. Well, the environment that they've got to do that in is incredibly important, right? They got an amazing shop where you can do welding, you can do wood fabrication, you can do robotics, you can build drones. So they've equipped their place to allow people to do the work that they're setting out to do there. And you can do it. It doesn't have to be crazy expensive. You just want to make sure that you're creating a place and a space that encourages that curiosity, that encourages that kind of development.
So if you want to get serious with innovation, it is not enough to have a corporate value that say we innovate or having a spreadsheet with your innovation opportunities. I mean, if you want to get serious, you need more than that, you know?
Yeah.
And do you know any example, any company that actually has been good building this belief system?
Yeah. So I'm going to give you two examples. I'm going to give you a bad example, and I'm going to give you a good example. The bad example actually comes out of the Think Wrong book, How to Conquer the Status Quo and Do Work That Matters. And we retell the story of visiting a very well-known multinational bank at their headquarters in New York, and sitting and waiting in the lobby for them. They had two big, large screen displays that said, "Nurturing a Culture of Innovation."
Classic.
Huge, like these 40-foot Jumbotron screens, or however big they were, huge, sitting in this lobby. That's what they're saying. And we're waiting in a very conservative, staid office environment, very nice, very luxurious. And we get brought up to the 27th floor, and we get in a room with the 7 innovation leaders from around the world. One was beaming in from London. And they said, "You got 20 minutes to tell us why you're here. Convince us why we should have a conversation with you." My first reaction was, that's not why we're here, but that wasn't the invitation we got. And that's not really how we want to spend the time. We'd like to have a conversation with you about what you're trying to accomplish and discover what the need is, and then we can talk to you about us. But we'd like to start by talking to you about you. And they're like, "Well, we got 20 minutes. I said, "Well, my first question for you is, what does the Jumbotron in the lobby say?" These are the innovation leaders from around the organization. They looked at each other. "I don't know." You pass by it every day. You cannot not see it. It's there. It's huge. It's on 2 screens. And they didn't know. The guy in London had, assume he doesn't see the display every day, but he can opt out of the game. The 6 of them didn't know. 6 innovation leaders had to sign. So that's the lip service, right? Mm-hmm. That's saying, we're going to say this is important, but we're not going to make the investment. We're not going to actually do the work. It turns out that the person who did invite us was quite embarrassed at the end. He left the organization. He said, well, what he learned about innovation there was innovation meant regulatory barriers to new entrants. Mm-hmm. So how could they build political capital to maintain regulatory barriers so emerging startups couldn't enter the field? And then for the existing players, how do you get to a level of equal share?
Yeah.
Right? So just status quo. Mm-hmm. So the status quo and regulatory barriers was their innovation strategy. Right? So that's the don't do that story. Yeah. Now, a company that I admire, certainly as somebody who lived in the UK for a while and got a chance to see some of the products, and I own some of their products, is Dyson. And Dyson, if you don't know Dyson, you've probably seen one of their products. If you travel through an airport and you put your hand in one of those hair dryers, the Air Blade is a Dyson product. Mm-hmm. If you've seen those cool looking vacuum cleaners that have a big ball so they can navigate around into different spaces, mm-hmm. Great product. If you use a hair dryer or a flat iron, you know that their hair products are amazing. And they've gotten into earphones that have air filtration systems. So if you look at a Dyson product, every Dyson product has some sort of ball. It has something that blows and it has something that sucks. So I say Dyson products have balls, they blow and they suck. So that's just something that's common across all their products. But if you look at the company closely, they spend £7 million a week on innovation. Wow. So they're taking it seriously, right? Mm-hmm. Their investment in research and development is significant. That's old data. So it may even be more current. That was the last time I looked, just a few years ago. And they're producing these amazing products that you can look at their revenues, and their revenues at the time when I was looking, were over 4.5 billion. So they're generating some serious financial capital. But if you kind of look down the list and think about those elements of the platform that I described, let's just take a look. So a next vision and purpose. Dyson's vision actually is about revolutionizing everyday products. And how do they create intellectual capital and financial capital? So what are the proprietary methods and technologies that they develop around everyday products? So they're looking at things that people just overlook, like a hairdryer or a flat iron. Like, what can you do with that? And they ask the question, what can we do with that, right? What's a need that we could address there? The next values and rituals is they actually celebrate creativity and learning. They celebrate failure because they celebrate the fact that it's leading them to new insight, to new opportunities. And they built human capital and social capital around being experimental. So they invest in that. For their next goals and strategies, they're actually focused on sustainability. And that's really important in terms of both the larger reputation, that people see these as products that are better for the future, better for the planet, better for the environment, better for society. That leads to being able to charge a premium, which improves their financial capital. They actually take an amazing look at data and knowledge management. They share that across all of their product developers. There's a famous recent story, maybe it's a couple years old at this point, maybe even longer than that, but Dyson was looking at building a luxury electric vehicle. And they spent $1 billion and decided not to go any further. So they made a decision. At some point they got to using their own version of the Super 7. Fascinating. There's demand, there's need for electric vehicles. There's a high-end market for luxury. But for them, they could never get the financial model to make sense, the business model to make sense. So they stopped, and people said, wow, that's a big failure for Dyson. And they came out and said, not a failure at all, because the $1 billion that we invested has resulted in technology advancements that we can deploy across all of our products. They learned, and they then took what they learned and they shared that and deployed it across everything else that they were doing. So while they might not be going forward with the car lifted their product portfolio up. So a good example, and that was that openness and sharing of data of what they were learning and making sure everybody had access to that. Then they have frameworks established that actually allow for teams to work fast, that allow for them to move quickly through their development cycle. So the fact that they've standardized innovation, which people think those are oxymorons, standardizing innovation, but you can standardize the way we innovate. What you don't standardize is what you innovate, right? And then because they're in the tool making business themselves, they are not afraid of adopting and trying and experimenting with new technologies and combining technologies in new ways. So their next tools and their next technology is really superior to many other companies. And then finally, so that helps them both with a competitive edge. It grows their financial capital. It grows their intellectual capital. It also attracts human talent, right? Human capital to the organization. I want to work in a place like that where I get to get my hands on those things. I get to work with those kinds of tools. And finally, they create an environment that encourages collaboration and experimentation. And that collaboration and experimentation is nurturing the human capital and the social capital. People feel like they belong to Dyson, right? That Dyson cares and that they belong there and that they're making a difference there.
Thank you, Greg. I think that those stories, both of them, really is easy to understand what to do, when not to do. And with these stories, we're coming to an end in this journey through the world of next leadership and innovation. So remember, building a culture of innovation, of capital building, starts with you, with your leadership, and with your systems. So now, go out and make next happen.